Hey guys, Warren S here, Rock Sculptor. Hope everybody's having a good day. Just wanted to follow up with another video. I'm going to break this down into a series of different videos on how to carve concrete, talk about mixed designs, texture tools, add mixtures, anything kind of an introductory kind of approach to this exciting craft. So let's just jump right in. First, let's talk about a little bit about the materials. Concrete carving has been around for a long time. Guys have been doing it for, I guess, since the 60s. Um, a lot of shotcrete meaning that it actually has large aggregate in it, and it's applied pneumatically. So that kind of gives you a background of that, especially what's made it popular in the theming industry. Um, so it's kind of a broad stroke, some of its origins. But let's talk about the ingredients and why they're important. And when I say they're important to me and my systems. Everybody has a different system, and that's totally acceptable. They just yield a different output. I look to culinary as kind of an analogy, if you will, meaning that if we can look at the one dish of pizza, for instance, your basic slice, consists of sauce, dough, and cheese. Any one of those items changes, it changes the output. Same thing is said with carved concrete. I feel with the mix, it's not important, but it yields a different output. So depending on the texture or rock or system that you're trying to achieve, it's very important. And more importantly, it's the sand, in my opinion. They are weighted. If you're looking at the sauce, cheese, and dough comparison, they are weighted. Maybe in the pizza, there's Domino's, there's Pizza Hut. Um, Again, either one of those elements could be at 33.3% weighted out of those three items. And in this sense, we know we need Portland cement. Um, that is the mother glue that holds our sand particles together. Okay, and the angularity of those components and the gradation is also very important. Again, important to me because of the way I finish my concrete. So having the ability to blend your own sand and cement has a litany of different benefits. So with that being said, the sand is what kind of makes up that texture at the surface. So sizing is very important. If we look at, let me see here, I got a little rock here. It's a piece of granite. Put this in the forefront. Very angularity in its geometry, so these edges are kind of sharp, if you will. So it tells me that's it's a dense piece of object here. Same thing is said with your concrete mixes. If this were we were doing a sandstone, I would up my sand content a little bit. And we'll talk about ratios. I'll break that down and try to keep it very simplistic. When we measure our sand to cement, it's based off volume. Primarily is because sand is usually stored outside and it holds moisture. So that's going to affect the weight. That's why we don't weigh our ingredients. Everything is kind of measured off 94 pounds of cement because that's what the bags of Portland cement are carried in. The carves is an admixture to treat that sand and cement. And what it does is has a litany of different benefits. Not only the shapeability or the clay likeness to it, but strength, shrinkage, and efflorescence blocking technology, which is very important in our trade. There are some other systems out there that could put lime in it. I'm not a proponent of lime. I've had issues with it in the past. Not saying it's all bad, just the way I was finishing out my features, I was introducing efflorescence into it. If you don't know what efflorescence is, Google it for one. But secondly, it's just the white leaching of minerals coming out at the surface. And yeah, it does clean off over time. It takes a long time to go away. So my very first water feature I did actually turn white, especially in the waterways. So a lot of that was in my early days. I was putting lime in there. Again, to each his own. Everybody has a system. I just know what works for me. That's all. Okay, so got 94 pounds of cement. That's what it comes in. It also comes in the 47 pounds, just a half, easy on your back, a little bit easier to measure off from. If you do have employees, a lot of the times the guy that's mixing is kind of at the lower end of that food chain. but it's so important to have that mix right at the right slump, because what'll happen is if it's not mixed correctly, um, for one, it could fall off. It could be very problematic. You can weaken the strength of it. Remember, it's not only we got to look good, we got to be able to handle the freeze and thaw cycles, at least up here in Washington State. So that's ultra important. Um, so durability is big time, with that, and it also needs to texture right, needs the patina right. So there's a lot of factors going involved, and that does go back to our sand. How are you finishing it? Um, we'll get into that. I'm going to have to show through demonstration kind of what I'm talking about, but it kind of gives you a basic narrative. Um, the carbs is a material. Trinic provides it. It's an admixture to sand and cement. Okay, and it's dosed at anywhere from 12% to 17%. So meaning that for every 100 pounds of Portland, you're either adding 12 pounds or 17 pounds. Keep it simplistic math. Um, and with the sand, it'll cheat, 200, 240 pounds or close to 300 pounds of mix, depending on your sand volumes, per bucket. So, pretty awesome stuff. What else can we get into? Some of the stuff that's in carbs, basically, there's a fiber in there. I'm not a big fan of fiber in the mix until I was able to network with Trinic. They their background is in mostly glass fiber reinforced concrete, um, and they sell goods for that industry. Well, lo and behold, they actually um, was able to put a fiber in there, at a dosage level that's very acceptable, and it carves very well. Doesn't affect the carving experience. A lot of the earlier days, I used to put polypropylene fibers in there, things like that. It just affected the carving experience. I like fiber. It's cheap insurance. A lot of times we're shaping the mud and stressing the mud, and you know that any added benefit that we could put in, I think is a wise choice on many levels. So that covers that. What else is there? There's efflorescence blocking technology in that. Efflorescence, I think I mentioned it earlier. It's the leaching of salts coming to the surface. So what we try to do is densify that concrete. We want to make it dense so it doesn't move the lime through there. I think Portland cement has lime in it, um, at its current levels, just inherently how it's manufactured, from the plant. So when you look at that, you can still get efflorescence, but we put things in there to help aid against that. The last thing you want is to do a beautiful water feature and get a call 6 months, 8 months, and in some cases I heard 3 weeks, as early as 3 weeks, you'll see efflorescence. Um, and it's not all the mix. Sometimes it is the placement of the concrete. Sometimes when it's not pneumatically applied, you can get pits and voids behind that, and those are like little dwelling areas for or stagnant water to kind of dwell. And if you're living in a freeze and thaw, those explode and crack your concrete. So something to be very, very mindful of. So let's talk about measuring. So we talk about, the sand, cement, the carbs. Um, like I said, we base everything off volumetric. So meaning when I say 1.5 to 1 ratio, that's 1.5 parts sand right here. Excuse me, right here. 1.5 parts sand, so it'll be 1.5 cups to 1 part cement. If I say 1.25 to 1, that's 1.25 parts sand to 1 part cement. Okay, I go all the way up. I swing it up to 1.75 parts cement to sand. Sometimes 2 to 1, depending on the sandstone. A lot of your ruins, if you want a sandy, granular finish at the surface, um, I would shoot somewhere in that range. So, and that all benefits job site production. Again, I'm not stamping these. I don't stamp my rock work. I have done it in the past. It does produce a nice effect, but the amount of time put into it, I just didn't see it penciling out. But again, that's just my flavor. All right, so we talked a little bit about the sand, the cement, the carbs. Um, so that kind of gives you a background on the mix designs. And yeah, just want to make sure I get everything covered. So let me draft up a mix. We'll get things cooking. And when we come back, we're going to go and lay up some mud. So stay tuned.